Okay, today is a little bit of a different video, but honestly, I just want to weigh in on something that's been percolating through the online world for a while now, recently coming to a head yet again with regards to a movement that I previously endorsed called Stop Killing Games, which makes me want to say my piece and give my opinion on an individual named Pirate Software, who kind of feels like the internet's current villain, I guess, across a pretty wide variety of communities. Just to get this out of the way, I don't typically talk about drama. I focus on technology, above all else, finance, video games, predatory practices, and sometimes politics. But for this one, instead of a whole investigation or a complicated breakdown, I want to try and give some insights on what I think is really happening with the pirate software situation and explain why nothing here actually matters because the internet mob will probably never get what they want. For anyone who's relatively unaware, even though news about this guy has been ping-ponging around various platforms like YouTube and Twitch and TikTok for, like, I don't know, 6 months straight, Pirate Software is an ex-Blizzard employee turned streamer, and lately, he's kind of a lolcow. Lolcow, for those of you who don't follow sort of deep internet lore, lolcow is a Kiwi Farms term, which means someone who can be milked for laughs. Actually, it goes even further than that, widely used to refer to someone named Chris Chan initially, but Kiwi Farms is probably the most widely recognized platform where it typically resides. It's basically someone who does stupid things, has ridiculous opinions, or gets easily goaded into various behaviors that other people find to be ridiculous, incorrect, or just plain cringeworthy. Examples of other streamers that are widely considered to be lolcows would be Darkside Phil, of course, also known as DSP, Wings of Redemption, or even maybe Boogie2988 more recently. In all honesty, it's really not a pleasant thing. These people are ridiculed, insulted, and often degraded for entertainment purposes by tens of thousands of viewers. But if we're trying to make sense of the current situation, the pirate software situation that is, we have to understand that widespread mockery and ridicule is a core component of what's happening right now. Here's a lightning fast summary of how it all went bad for him, before I try to explain, in my opinion, why it will never end in the way that most people seem to want it to. Here goes. Back about 5 or 6 months, as of when this video gets made, Pirate Software was part of a classic WoW guild called OnlyFangs. The guild contained a pretty hefty number of large streamers, that was like the whole purpose of it, and as a result had millions upon millions upon millions of viewers for almost everything that they ever did. During the daily activities of the guild, Pirate Software ran into a situation where his group, or rather the group he was in, he wasn't the leader, made some mistakes. Being that the game is hardcore, if you die, there's no coming back on that character. You have to make a new one, which can take hundreds of hours. So after the mistakes were made, the group fractured and communication broke down. During the chaos, Pirate Software ran for his life and basically adopted a sort of every man for himself mentality, which didn't necessarily kill his teammates, but he probably could have helped save them. Basically, he just played super badly. Okay, that's it. Well, when you're talking about the hardcore online gaming communities, that's like the cardinal sin of group content. Okay, it's like the worst thing that you can do. Not to mention the fact that he purports to be extremely good at the game, which resulted in a tidal wave of criticism against him, on top of nicknames, everybody called him Roach, things like that, memes, and to be completely honest with you, whether or not you think it's deserved, harassment, okay? People harassed him a lot. Now, I never talked about this back when it first happened because I could not possibly care any less. Some guy made a mistake in a video game and everyone dogpiled on against him. But the narrative that took shape, which is really stupid in my opinion, because in a vacuum, the entire thing is completely unimportant. The narrative that took shape was that Pirate Software never takes accountability. People love that word. And that's the part that stuck. Over the next few months, his entire online existence got torn apart. People went back through his archives. They found out that he was almost certainly faking his playthrough runs for puzzle games of all things, looking up answers and then pretending to be oh so smart in front of the camera. People found out that he allegedly sent out DMCA strikes against an indie game that may or may not have actually deserved it for maybe using his voice, but that's not really relevant for today. And something that realistically should have died off pretty quickly, that is the atmosphere of this is the popular person to hate right now. I mean, people should have moved on pretty fast. It sort of kept simmering down below beneath the surface. On a personal note, I think I do understand why that happened. Pirate Software, for many people, is not a likable person. His mannerisms, his cadence, especially his attitude, it's all frankly weird and repulsive. You know how sometimes when you meet someone, you can't necessarily explain why, but you just immediately, viscerally, and deeply dislike them? Yeah, a lot of people feel that way about pirate software, myself kind of included, which led to a sort of feedback loop where thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who already disliked him previously felt vindicated by all of these discoveries, piling onto anything that they could see that would reinforce their pre-existing opinions. It's a vicious cycle, and pirate software was fully immersed in it. But the reason I'm weighing in now, of all times, is because something else happened. I'll keep this part short. There's this movement in video games spearheaded by a channel called Accursed Farms and a creator named Ross, who is highly intelligent, and I honestly respect him a great deal. And the movement is all about preservation of games. Lately, there's a problem where live service products can sometimes be taken offline completely, thus voiding the purchases that everyone made to begin with. And as an effort to fight against this, Ross led a pretty extensive campaign to actually try and get political representatives across the world to take notice and do something about it. Well, Pirate Software was an extremely vocal and bombastically pompous voice against that movement, right? There's stuff you can criticize about it, sure, but he was like one of the main critics trying to like rip it down and demean it. He came out with a couple of videos about how stupid it is, but he just blatantly misrepresented the actual goals. Here's a montage that Ross put together of what that sort of looked like.
Oh shit, now this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude. Now, eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid ass move. That's an incredibly stupid ass move. I think this is ass. This is complete garbage. All of this can eat shit then. I drop the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass. The whole thing. That sounds stupid as shit.
Yeah, if you combine that attitude while being completely wrong on the merits of the argument, with the realization that he was more than likely faking his own accolades with regards to complicated puzzle games, and refusing to shoulder any responsibility in hardcore gaming communities, even when he objectively made mistakes, hopefully everyone can see the perfect storm that happened. Pirate Software had rapidly become one of the most popular online personalities to hate on. This is the part where I have to step back though, because believe it or not, I actually have a very good idea of what he's going through. And I'm pretty sure that the end result of all this is an internet mob that will never get what they want, and thus can easily spiral out of control even further, which it kind of already has. I just hope it doesn't get worse. So here's where I'm coming from. Over the years, like 7 or 8 years of doing this at this point, there's been a number of different times where I published something that made people angry, okay? It's not exactly uncommon. I do that a lot. Typically, actually almost exclusively, the people that get the most angry and the topics that cause the most anger are about video games, go figure. Gaming communities are on a hair trigger, and absolutely not in a positive way, about anything that they ever perceive to be even slightly disrespectful or negative towards them and their friends. Well, a couple of times where that happened, one in particular comes to mind most of all, after I had given my opinion about something, whether it be drama or the quality of a product or the behavior of developers, whatever it happened to be. After I had given my opinion, other creators would chime in and do responses to that opinion. In one case, the responses that were done, there were a few, I think, but one in particular caused the bulk of the issue. The responses that were done went semi-viral. One of them was like the most popular video that the content creator had ever posted on their channel, I think. And these responses, as well as the rhetoric that they used and the type of community that these creators had kind of deliberately cultivated for themselves, resulted in a completely ridiculous amount of harassment. I was getting thousands of messages wishing that I would get cancer, telling me to end myself, ridicule, insults. They even tried to find my phone number. It went beyond YouTube far as a platform. I started getting emails, Discord DMs, and basically over the course of like 3, maybe 4 weeks, it was just a never-ending constant stream of people on the internet trying to straight up harass me into submission over critique about a video game. The people responsible for it will never admit that they're garbage or that their fans are garbage for doing it, and that the whole thing was absurdly blown out of proportion for the sake of views alone. But that's also just an inescapable part of the online world. That's what happens when you come at things with an abrasive personality, which I did back then even more so than today. And to be totally honest, I was just reaping what I sowed. And as big as it felt on my side, pirate software is going through something 10 times as long and 50 times larger than I ever experienced. Here's the part where I have insights, and also the part where I may genuinely offend some people, but it is what it is. That's kind of what this whole thing's about. Pretty much no one who watches YouTube without creating content for a large audience has any comprehension of what it's like to start getting thousands of direct messages and comments saying the exact same things over and over while insulting you. They have no idea the mental toll that something like that takes on a person. And they all think, from a solo individual perspective, that their feedback matters or has value. But it doesn't. I know I can already picture some people's faces turning beet red as they think, yes, it does. My opinion does matter. But no, it doesn't. And let me explain precisely why. Let's say you get 1,000 negative comments where pretty much all of them say the exact same thing. They cite the same exact quotes, the moments of the video, they use the same exact arguments, and they have similar criticism about taking accountability. For each of those 1,000 people, it's the first and the only time that they said anything. To them, it's a reasonable comment that could have value, right? Because in a vacuum, it's the only one. But in reality, the creator reading those 1,000 comments reaches a point, even after probably a couple dozen of them, where they not only know what the next comment will likely say in some variation or another, they're already completely sick of it. Think about walking down the street and every single person that you pass says, your clothes are ugly, over and over. What do you think happens after a couple of blocks? After the 100th time that you heard it, what about the 101st time? Does that 101st time have commensurate value? Does it make you think about something that you haven't already thought about 100 times over before it? The answer is resoundingly no. It is a worthless comment. The 700th person to say it gets tuned out completely, or you just get angry at them, because you reach a point where the feedback has been given, it has been heard, and everything after that point in time is useless, repetitive dogpiling trash. Viewers on social media have this blissfully mistaken assumption that what they say matters intrinsically, but that's not true. What matters is unique feedback. If you want to criticize, that's fine, but you have to do it in a way that provokes thought or provides insight of some kind. Because if it blends in with a fire hose of negative bullshit that's identical to everything that they've been hearing for weeks, indistinguishable from everything around it, a creator's mind lumps it all together and throws it all out the window. But that's actually one of the better scenarios. There was just a situation like 2 days ago, where a 29-year-old wildlife sanctuary YouTuber took her own life in large part because of the online harassment from a subreddit where people assumed that their critical feedback somehow mattered or should be heard. They don't think about the fact that being the 600th person to say, you suck at life, you shouldn't be doing what you love to do, or all of these things, can permanently damage someone's mind. And when we're talking about someone who gets subjected to hundreds or thousands of people degrading or demeaning them on a daily basis, not everyone can handle that. This is the important part, okay? There comes a point in time, what precise number I honestly don't know, but it's smaller than you would probably think, where the dynamic of comments or messages and feedback stops being human to human, if it's all overwhelmingly negative, that is, and it starts becoming human to mob. When that transition happens, speaking from experience here, by the way, there's a variety of outcomes. One, probably the most common, is depression, sinking into a feeling of worthlessness, which happens to a lot of creators in that situation. Hopefully they recover with time, they take a break, who knows. But for me, and I also highly, highly suspect that this is true for pirate software as well, for me it was stubbornness. After that transition takes place, when it's now you versus the internet mob, not humans to humans, all saying the same shit over and over, by the way. The mob is just like screaming the same things repeatedly, each thinking that because they said it, now you should listen to them. Once that happens, you grit your teeth and you don't give them a single thing that they're demanding. As soon as it's a mob screaming for you to grovel before them and apologize, at least for me, again, I'm like 99% sure this is exactly what's happening with pirate software too. As soon as it's a mob, they're not getting what they want. It doesn't matter if you were wrong, and me personally, I certainly was wrong, at least in one of my most notable situations like this, the biggest one, back a number of years. But it doesn't matter anymore if you're right or wrong, because the mob doesn't deserve the satisfaction. In my case, I had thousands upon thousands of people screaming at me to take a video down, so I left it up. I had people yelling at me to apologize, so I ignored them on purpose. I had people telling me what to do or how to act or what to say or how to respond, so I did the precise opposite wherever possible and denied the mob any chance it had of ever claiming victory, even a shred, in any capacity whatsoever. My version of surviving what felt like a never ending stream of filth directed my way, or winning against it, I guess, was to make sure that these people got absolutely nothing in return that they wanted. And it worked. Eventually, they gave up. They had no impact on me. They got no concessions. They received no apologies. They got literally nothing. And while I'm certainly not going to sit here and say it's the best way to respond in a crisis, no one watching a YouTube video actually knows how they would respond in that same crisis until it happens, and most people have not gone through this. I see that same exact response right now from Pirate Software, but it's happening on a scale that I couldn't even dream of. His defense mechanism, after the shift has taken place, where it's now a ridiculously large internet mob all against him individually every second of every day, whether deserved, undeserved, right or wrong, it doesn't matter anymore. His defense mechanism is, I will not cave to this mob, which, unfortunately, results in one of the largest torch and pitchfork style internet hate brigades that I've ever personally witnessed. On the bright side, if I'm correct here in the interpretation that he has a similar fight or flight style response compared to my own, if I'm correct here, then he will properly understand deep down inside secretly that he was objectively wrong about the Stop Killing Games initiative. In a year or 2 or 5 years, he may even come out publicly and say it. I was wrong, or admit it, who knows. While in the meantime, though, adjusting his content behind the scenes in a way that incorporates the lessons learned from this debacle silently. However, short term, the rabid mob of internet viewers hell-bent on shaming him and publicly forcing an apology or a retraction, or I don't even know what they want at this point. It feels like they just want him to have a breakdown. I don't think they know what they want either. It's just popular to hate him. But if I'm right about this, they'll get nothing. And to a degree, I actually kind of support that. I don't think the mob typically deserves to win. At the end of the day, Pirate Software was objectively wrong in his critique of Stop Killing Games. Like, just on a factual basis, he got a whole bunch of things wrong. But that overly confident criticism just so happened to coincide with an atmosphere shift where hating Pirate Software is the trendy thing to be doing. As a result, millions upon millions of people have now seen his content under the worst contextual circumstances possible for him, which leaves him with an immutably stubborn response to a brute force-minded internet mob which continues to linger, possibly even grow larger, month after month, constantly circling back stronger after each new skirmish with them. I don't even know if there is a valid way out of it for him at this point. If he did issue like a thoughtful response and apologize to everyone, it would take a monumental shift in coverage from a slew of creators all simultaneously to even make a dent in the current narrative. But the final message that I have for anyone who watches this video is that none of you actually know what it's like to go through that. I don't either, to be honest, not at that scale, okay? That's like a whole different thing. The little bit that I went through was already bad enough. But even the situation that I dealt with came down to personal resilience in the face of literally thousands of people who wanted nothing more than to just watch me suffer. Thinly disguised, by the way, under the claim of just providing feedback or just some criticism. Like, no, they just wanted to watch me suffer. And the same thing is happening to him, okay? It's abundantly clear. Which leads me to the understanding that while Pirate Software is today's internet villain, for a multitude of reasons, some of them definitely valid, and it's extremely satisfying to have a collective villain, not to mention lucrative for many creators. I mean, the ad revenue is huge for a lot of people. He's also a person, and far from the likes of BitBoy or litigation trolls or previous contenders for internet villain before him, of which there were many, he hasn't really harmed people, has he? No, he hasn't. The honest answer is no. He doesn't harm people. They just don't like him, which I do think makes a difference in how the situation should be treated. That's it. Do not contribute to the harassment that he's receiving, because no variation of anything that any of us could ever possibly say to him or about him in some lame attempt at forcing an apology because we think we're owed one, or an acknowledgement or whatever it is, will ever work. Because no matter what it is, it's been said 50 times over already, 25 different ways, with the only impact of reinforcing his very likely mindset that the mob does not deserve to win. Again, I see myself in this situation. I think he has an identical response to what I had. And back then, it didn't matter if it was 10,000 people or 500,000 people. They were not going to get what they wanted. I was going to do the exact opposite of everything that they said, which, again, not the best response in the world. But when you're talking about the type of harassment and brigading and dogpiling that makes some people end their own lives, it's a decent response. That defense mechanism is valuable. I can't be 100% sure that I'm right about all of this, but let's just say I'm about as sure as someone can reasonably be or get without certainty. And yeah, that's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. A special VPN deal, a special passive income application called HoneyGain. No relation to the browser extension called Honey. These are entirely separate companies that have nothing to do with each other. Saw somebody talk about that. It doesn't matter. Locals and Patreon, monthly memberships, etc., etc. Just great links down below. Check them all out. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.